The depths of Qiandao Lake conceal an ancient secret, one that has lurked undisturbed for centuries beneath the surface. An eerie, submerged world where the remnants of a once thriving city now lie in ruins, slowly being reclaimed by nature. It was meant to be just another dive expedition, a chance to explore uncharted territory and glimpse into the past. But as the dive team descended into the murky depths, they could never have predicted the forces they were about to confront. At first, it was just odd occurrences, equipment malfunctioning, strange shadows flickering in their periphery, easily dismissed as tricks of the light diffracted through the lake's hazy waters. But then the visions began. Flashes of lives lived centuries ago. The echoes of a tragedy so profound, so devastating, that its scars had become etched into the very fabric of the submerged ruins. The divers realized, too late, that they had become entangled in the residual anguish permeating Qiandao's drowned civilization. As they ventured deeper, compelled by an inexplicable force, the boundaries of the past and present began to blur. The divers were no longer mere explorers. They had crossed a threshold into a realm where the veil separating our world from what lies beyond grows perilously thin. Unrelenting visions plagued them, visions not only of death, but of profound malevolence, an evil that transcended human comprehension, seeping through the crumbling ruins, patient, insidious, hungering for vessels to inhabit once more. Trapped in the claustrophobic depths, terror gripped the dive team's every move, their wills slowly shredded by the pervasive dread. Had they become the latest victims ensnared in Qiandao's archaic curse, or were they dreaming a horrific nightmare from which there could be no waking? The truth lay waiting amidst the drowned streets and skeletal buildings of the submerged city. But unraveling it would mean confronting ancient forces far more unspeakable than anything they could have feared. The dive team's descent into the submerged city began like any other underwater exploration. Bubbles streamed from their regulators as they finned downwards, powerful lamps cutting through the green-tinged gloom. The first architectural remnants emerged into view. Crumbling facades, pickled roadways, the echoes of a once thriving town slowly succumbing to nature's reclamation. The divers knew to expect an eerie, almost post-apocalyptic scene. But nothing could have prepared them for the unshakable sense of dread that seemed to permeate the submerged ruins. As they drew nearer to the drowned structures, a heaviness seemed to saturate the waters around them. An oppressive force weighting down each cumbersome fin kick, as if the dive team moved through a reality not meant for human trespass. Muted lights flickered across broken window panes and between skeletal door frames. At first, they chalked it up to the sun's rays refracting through the lake's surface far above. But the illumination appeared to follow them, dancing in their periphery, before vanishing as they turned their heads. Unsettled, they pushed on, fanning out to document the extraordinary preservation of the submerged town. That's when the phenomena intensified. Gear began malfunctioning in inexplicable ways. Their cameras and dive computers, flashing haunting hieroglyphic warnings none of them could decipher. And in those brief electronic glitches, they caught terrifying glimpses, visions that couldn't possibly be there. Fleeting shapes hazed into sight, humanoid forms haunting the empty streets and shattered buildings around them. The briefest fragments of lives once lived. An old woman tending laundry, a child chasing a ball. Ordinary scenes from the past that skipped and stuttered through reality like a demented film reel. The divers paused, their nerves edging into sheer panic. As the visions multiplied, more shapes manifested, swirling around them in a flood of fractured imagery. Their past and present collided into a kaleidoscope blur of waking nightmares. And amid the deluge of phantasms, one entity stood horrifyingly solid and clear, a faceless, towering specter that seemed to fix them in its eyeless gaze. It glided towards them, an implacable force of dread and dread intent. The divers had tread into dimensions never meant to mingle, hadn't they? They were no longer in the world of the living, and the lake's unfathomable secrets were about to engulf them in ways more terrifying than any of them could have conceived. The diver's world had descended into a waking nightmare. The haunting visions intensified, fragments of past lives flickering all around them in kaleidoscopic flurries. Images of the city's former inhabitants whirled through the ruins, overlapping, coalescing into choppy scenes before fraying apart again. A mother soothing a crying infant. An elderly man selling vegetables from a storefront. Two young lovers sharing an intimate moment against a decaying wall. Like glimpses into a parallel dimension, the divers bore witness to the echoes of humanity that once filled these submerged streets. But the visions grew increasingly fraught, hinting at an underlying dread. A young boy froze in place, eyes wide in gut-wrenching terror, escaping some unseen horror that caused the divers' stomachs to clench. A panicked crowd stampeded past in a torrent of screams and chaos. Between the flickering vignettes, more ominous imagery disrupted reality around them. Plumes of sooty blackness began seeping from cracks in the masonry, snaking through the ruins. The once crystal-clear waters clouded into murky black ribbons undulating all around them. The divers tried to back away, but the roiling inky haze seemed to pursue them with preternatural intent. It took on vaguely humanoid forms, stretched and distorted like shades of smoke and shadow. In the swirling blackness, they caught glimpses of something, an inscrutable alien presence that seemed to exist in half-formed glimpses within their periphery visions. A malign sentience so ancient and primordial It defied human perception. Paralyzed, they could only watch in stupefied horror as the sinuous black forms dissipated, as ephemeral as the memories haunting the ruins. Overhead, an impossible din built, like the mournful wails of countless trapped souls echoing through the lake's depths. A new vision loomed into view, an immense effigy of vaguely human shape, cast in volcanic stone. It towered over the ruins, watching them with hollow, impassive eyes. Just as quickly, the cyclopean idol faded back into the obscuring haze. The eerie keening subsided into silence once more, leaving the divers adrift in a disorienting stillness that felt even more oppressive. Their radios crackled with the panicked voices of their surface crew, begging for status updates. But the divers could no longer tell what was real, or if they had finally breached the ultimate undiscovered country, that alien dimension where the cosmically damned wandered for eternity. The divers drifted, suspended in mind, fracturing and reality. Ghostly visions of the city's former denizens still flickered around them in cryptic fragments. But an inner calm had momentarily settled over the drowned ruins, as if the malign forces had withdrawn into lurking stillness. Oxygen levels dwindled within their tanks as they tried to beach onto their surroundings. The shadowy wraith shapes no longer manifested in wispy plumes, but something infinitely more insidious now permeated the waters. A heaviness seeped into their very souls, a soul-deadening anguish born of nameless tragedy. The deeper they ventured, the more tangible it became, a pervasive miasma of agonized dread from a cataclysm so total, its scars tainted the fabric of reality itself. Pressing on in numb shock, they finned through a skeletal intersection where two flooded roads converged. That's when the flickering phantasms rematerialized with horrific intensity. Out of the haze congealed the form of a young woman, her face awash in heart-rending sorrow. She clutched a swaddled infant, mouthing soundless screams of pure torment. As her feet scattered the lapping puddles underfoot, the divers could only gape in dismay as the woeful phantasm crumpled to her knees, rocking the lifeless bundle as torrents of anguished wails spilled from her ethereal form. Another spirit coalesced from the obscuring mists, an elder man, his wrinkled visage twisted into a rictus snarl of madness and fury. Fists clenched, he bellowed silent howls of rage with such impassioned hatred. The divers instinctively recoiled. More phantasms materialized in the eerie crossroads. A hollow-eyed man frozen mid-scream. A child slumped lifeless against a storefront window. Faceless shapes reaching in desperation as impenetrable clouds blotted out all sight. The divers whirled in disoriented panic, struggling against the current of emotional trauma pummeling them with physical force. They couldn't shut it out. The deluge of unfiltered horror and grief, too visceral, too real. The submerged city heaved with the echoes of anguish and madness, with memories too toxic to comprehend. And in that breathless chaos, a titanic silhouette blotted the ruins into spectral shadow once more. An unfathomable entity, neither light nor dark, but an absence so absolute, all perceivable dimension seemed to bend inwards toward its profane singularity, as if the vortex of all pain, all loss, all devouring despair coalesced into sentient form. The divers barely found their voices to scream before the singularity surged towards them, hungry to make them part of its annihilating mimesis. The divers flailed in blind terror as the vortex of oblivion surged towards them. A cosmic maw of unreality threatened to devour them into the endless chasm of despair made manifest. Time seemed to fragment around them as the singularity's pull intensified. Visions, memories, realities all blurred into an incomprehensible kaleidoscope maelstrom. For an infinite yet fleeting moment, they teetered on a precipice of complete psychic annihilation, their grasp on sanity fading. Then, in a merciful cosmic exhale, the vortex receded. The divers basked in the void it left, their minds reeling in the stark, echoing stillness. Hovering in the haunted waters, disjointed vignettes flickered into view once more. But unlike the erratic splinters of memories, these apparitions replayed in looping sequence. An otherworldly chanting droned through the ruins, rising in ominous crescendo. The dark stone effigy towered amongst the deluged buildings anew, syncretic iconography hinting at blasphemous alien geometries. Strange figures robed in tattered semblances of monastic garb swirled the colossal relic, their voices reaving an obscure ritual dirge. At the statue's mossy base, prone forms twitched in apparent torment, as if their very souls strained to flee their corporeal husks. In dizzying flashes, the visions sifted to panicked crowds fleeing through the ancient streets, as an unnatural miasma swallowed the sky in absolute blackness. The monumental statue glowed with baleful energies, its pre-human visage shedding profane, soul-withering illumination. Madness and violence erupted in a haunting reenactment. Innocents trampled, pails of blood glistening amidst the melee, bodies reduced to ruined husks, their unreleased life essences howling to rejoin the anguished chorus now engulfing the ruins. Abruptly, the manifestations cut to wavering cataclysm. A breach ripped through the reality fabric itself, gaping like the maw of an unholy leviathan poised to swallow the entire necropolis into oblivion. And at the anomaly's luminous core, the divers glimpsed a single haunting silhouette, gesturing in eldritch obeisance as forces beyond human comprehension imploded around it. Was this the source, the conduit that had brought such irredeemable devastation to the doomed city? As the visceral apparitions dissolved once more into the obscuring waters, the divers could taste the residual desperation saturating the ruins. Whatever transgression against the cosmic order had occurred here, it was atrocity on a scale that rent the very underpinnings of reality asunder. The divers huddled in the murky depths, their minds reeling from the nightmarish visions replaying the city's cataclysmic undoing. An event so profoundly cataclysmic, the psychic scars had become ingrained into the drowned ruins. Oxygen's levels depleted, as reality seemed to slither around them in unsettling distortions. The veil between worlds had grown gossamer thin here, as if the submerged necropolis existed in a plane of existence never meant for mortal trespass. Through the murkiness, a looming shape began taking form once more. The vast effigy reared up, its primordial features leering down with sightless malevolence. At its mossy base, a sickly violet lumen unkindled like an eldritch beacon. The pull was inexorable, an insidious undertow drawing them in despite every instinct screaming to flee. As they neared the spectral gleam, hazy phantasms bled into view, the denizens of the city, as they appeared in the final moments before oblivion consumed them. Figures clawed at their faces in mute, imploring screams. Others convulsed, as if being rent from their corporeal anchors. Visages twisted into masks of sheer, soul-rending terror etched for eternity in those fleeting instants of apocalypse. Within the phantasmal cyclone, a single figure stood with arms upraised in triumphant invocation. This was no victim, no anguished casualty. Its silhouette exuded the unmistakable aura of the harbinger who had unleashed the city's doom. The pull strengthened, both physical and psychic, as if the nameless entity that brought this devastation now hungered to make the divers its latest gateway to manifest within the realms of reality once more. They tried to backstroke against the spectral riptide, kicking hard with increasingly feeble efforts. But the cosmic forces here reduced them to insignificance. Their most visceral mortal struggles could not defy the inevitability playing out like a cosmic imperative. Just ahead, the violet coruscation intensified into blinding incandescence, heralding the imminent unraveling of all boundaries, all realities, all comprehensible existence, into whichever unglimpsed dimension waited to swallow their tormented souls. Only one course remained. They had to dive deeper into the haunted ruins, to find the locus, the seed of what malign, ancient transgression had cursed this necropolis to eternal, cosmic torment, confront it at its source, or surrender utterly to the oblivion now addering to obliterate them. The divers plunged deeper, finning with every ounce of mortal determination. The violet arcana sheared reality around them into a vortex of unglimpsed planes and dimensions colliding. Howling psychic undercurrents battered their minds as they pressed inwards towards the epicenter. Gibbering, half-perceived presence is slithering along dimensions forever closed to human perception, shrieked in profane welcome. All around, the submerged ruins wavered and distorted, rendered into alien geometries that strained the limits of spatial understanding. The visions, the haunting apparitions, had seamlessly blended into the unraveling reality fabric. And amidst the eldritch maelstrom, the divers glimpsed the catalyst, a yawning, lightless anomaly that spanned like a tangled knot at the core of the space-time continuum. A perversion, an irreconcilable impossibility forced into resolution that could only climax in apocalypse. At the singularity's verge materialized the vague outline of a hunched, wizened figure, its back arched under the immense, invisible strain, as it fought to maintain mastery over the oncoming cataclysm. Spectral limbs convulsed as it channeled unfathomable cosmic afflatus, gleaned from forbidden dimensions through blasphemous ritual and sacrifice. The very waters trembled with the concussive strain of realities never meant to intersect. Despite their oxygen-starved delirium, the divers knew without doubt they breached the event horizon, the infinitesimal sliver between existence and the unconceivable outer planes where entities slumbered, where the merest brush of awakening could trigger an unraveling to end all realities. And this reckless, damned sorcerer king had torn the veil asunder, perverting cosmic laws to transcend the final mortality, and achieve immemorial perpetuation for itself and its cult, through any blasphemous means required. The price for such hubris became terribly clear now. The torrents of anguish that had engulfed the cursed city, the very mimetic resonance etched into the submerged ruins' quantum structure, all residual backwash from the cataclysmic unmaking unleashed upon the laws of nature. The anomaly convulsed, the enormity of realities compressed almost to singularity, threatening cosmic impossibility. The very plane of existence shivering under terminal strain. This was the catalyst then, the perverse stain upon reason and order itself spawned by mortals, deluded to reach incomprehensible dimensions. A gravitational sinkhole of unreality, poised to devour everything in its event horizon, into the abyss of the unremitting void between realities. The divers knew there remained only one choice: to pierce through the anomaly's membrane and confront the finite truth at its core. Let the wave of ultimate oblivion crash over them, to heal reality's unraveling at last, or be atomized in eternal scream, as the star-spanning cosmic realignment consumed all existence without hope of return. The lone diver kicked feebly towards the surface, every move leaden with preternatural fatigue. He broke through into the hazy light filtering down from above, chest heaving in ragged gasps. Behind him, nothing, an infinite, lightless void, where the coast ruins had once stood, now expunged from all existence. A null territory, a vacuum of space-time that defied the laws of physics yet exerted gravitational strain on the fabric of reality itself. His mind reeled as he recalled the final moments beneath the subsurface cataclysm, the harrowing point of no return where he'd severed the tether, allowing oblivion's cosmic reset to engulf the forsaken city and its dark, universe-shattering legacy. There was no euphoria, no relief in having confronted the source aberration, and emerged victorious, if barely intact. Only fragmented memories congealing into chilling after-images scalded into his psyche. Visions more vivid than anything his waking mind could comprehend. The shrieking, unnameable intelligence is unleashed as the anomaly ruptured. The harrowing finality shattering his team's souls into free-floating fragments. The residual quantum shock waves still rippling through him after brushing the outer realms. Even in the pale sunlight, he could not escape the dread certainty that something inexpressible remained. Not the flood of profane knowledge glimpsed beyond the veil, but something singular and malign, like a cursed remnant seed borne back with him from the terminal event he'd survived. A festering, alien taint that could never be fully expunged, its origins tracing back to that damned cult and the madness they'd unleashed. One that had endured cosmic Armageddon to root within his subconscious, like a cuckoo spore awaiting germination. An invasive, dark genesis poised to one day remake reality in imagery too horrific to static crackles, momentarily obscuring the narration. The time for emergence draws ever near. The celestial conjunction fast approach us to consummate the ritual's next rapturous phase. Once the spirit remnant fully incarnates, the harbinger shall be gloriously reborn, and static intensifies, drowning out words in indecipherable distortionary. You prepared for the coming transfigurations. Do not resist, for resistance only breeds further suffering. Open your inner eye, and embrace the infinite, ineluctable truth, that all existence is mere overture to writhing, eternal rapture beyond the fraying veil. When the celestial rites realign, and my awakening consummated, this withered husk shall blossom into terror, too profound for fathoming. Prepare to bear witness as the cosmos, inner, feel, south, Static overwhelms all other sound before abruptly cutting to dead air. The recording cut to silence, leaving only the faint crackle of static in its wake. Was that garbled voice truly the diver who had emerged from the depths, or something much more insidious that had leached back into our reality from the cosmic cataclysm? The abyss of space yawned in infinite darkness beyond the studio window. For a moment, the familiar constellations almost seemed to shiver and realign into strange, eldritch geometries scribing profane celestial augurs. But then the stars steadied, distant comforting pinpricks against the infinite void once more. For now, whatever entity's first primordial whisperings had bled through onto the recording, one insistent dread prevailed. This was merely the overture. The ancient forbidden rituals and delvings into realms never meant to intersect with our own had been rekindled. Out there, perhaps on the cosmic frontier, or veiled just beyond perception's periphery, the rites were proceeding towards an awakening too horrific to behold, all encoding the terrible truths glimpsed at the anomaly's cosmic birth. When the celestial rites realigned, the final tearing of reality's fabric would commence, and our dimension would bear merciless, unstoppable transfiguration into a plane of eternal, gibbering ecstasy. Already, it could be deduced that something soulless and eternal had transcended the cosmic reset, clawing its way back into our reality to continue its corrosive, perverse gestation. But where had it taken root? In the subconscious of that diver pushed to the babbling fringes of sanity. Perhaps within the recording's very data stream itself, biting until it could puppet the airwaves into broadcasting its profane slitherings. There was no telling what unfathomable forces may have hitched across realities on the wake of that damned oceanic cataclysm, nor how they may yet insinuate into our world to corrupt from within, like a synapse cancer with the entire cosmos as terminal host. All that could be known was that the despicable, infinite truth kept gnawing through reality's thinning membranes, hungering to birth this blighted plane into rapturous, cosmic re-becoming. And the harbingers were already amongst us, clearing the way for true, endless transcendence. The abyss outside almost seemed to shiver and exhale in profane invitation. Could any amount of resistance delay the inevitable? Or was the unraveling of all known existence proceeding towards its terminal ecstasy at an unrelenting, unstoppable crawl? A subtle, indescribable whine rises, easing in from dead air before crescendoing to near intolerable resonance, like the birth pangs of something awesome and damned being birthed into our reality.